Hello to everyone. It's nice, very nice to be together on the second day of our Cambridge event. This Cambridge Day, actually these two Cambridge Days are specially organized for Bulgaria. And I would like to thank you to our partner, Cambridge University Press, and to Duncan and Gabriela, which you can see now with us for the support they provide to CLET Bulgaria and for all the speakers we have for these days. I'm sure that yesterday and also today, the information which we have is very useful, and it's, how to say, this motivated very strong to be close to our students, to our children, also to support them in this very hard pandemic time, actually. So one time I have read that one of the best decision in our life is to learn and to invest to learn more and more foreign languages. And now, because I'm a mom of a 5 years old girl, I understand this very well. Because to support the children to learn more foreign languages, it's one of the best choice actually we can do in our life. Today we have presentation, which I'm sure that will be very interesting for you as yesterday. And also I would like to tell you in the end of our second day, you can complete our feedback form. In this feedback form, please to leave your names and school name, because we will send your certificates with the names you will provide of the feedback form. So in case you would like to be in English, so please write in English. In case to be on Bulgarian languages, so please write on Bulgarian languages. I will help to Gabriela about this, and you will receive all the certificates during the next week. In case there is some technical problems, please send me an email, m.tudorova@clet.bg. I'm Magdalena. Most of you know me very well, so please write me and I will forward you the feedback form. Thank you very much. And now is time for Angie presentation. So stay safe and good luck to everyone.
Thank you very much, Maggie. And before we hand over to Andrzej, I'm just going to give you an introduction to what he's going to talk about. I'm sure he could do that very capably himself, but Andrzej and I were just speaking beforehand that the last time that he and I saw each other face to face was actually in the Marinella Hotel in Sofia, yes, which was, I think, 3 years ago, probably, yes, around this time. I don't think that was the last time I was in Bulgaria. It certainly wasn't, but it was the last time we saw each other, and that's an indication, isn't it, of how times have changed. And we didn't have this event last year, but we're not having this event this year, but next year we definitely will have the event, and I hope that we'll see you all back face to face and you know, in good health and spirits in the future. So Andrzej's going to talk to us about advanced learners, really, and I think he's going to talk about exams, but also talk about real world learning and how to kind of cross that bridge between real world needs and the needs of the examination room. And there will be some examples. It's going to be a practical session. I've seen Andrzej do something like this before, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. We know each other for a long time because Andrzej has done a lot of work for Cambridge over the years. I think we first met in Vilnius probably 10 years or more ago. Something like that. I remember you giving me a great tour of the city. But since then, you've worked for Cambridge, but also on a number of different training projects, which took you to Saudi Arabia for some time and further away in Asia. And you've got a CELTA, you've got an MA in linguistics, you're incredibly well qualified. You've worked at Vilnius Business College, and you've got qualifications from the Open University. You have your own training company. The list goes on. And you currently do a lot of work for us at Cambridge University Press and at Cambridge Assessment, and we're very grateful that you're going to talk to us again today. So I think really, if I haven't given away the game completely, I hope that you're going to tell us how to encourage your students to develop those skills that will take them from the exam room into the real world and vice versa. So Andrzej, enjoy the talk. You have plenty of time. You can take questions at the end if you want. We'll be watching out in the Q&A box. Thanks very much.
Thank you for the introduction, Duncan. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about going beyond the boundaries, because exam preparation is not the main thing in life, although it's a very important threshold to cross for our learners. They do have to sit exams every now and then on different occasions in different subjects, but we probably need to explore further. And well, I think learners who have already reached the level of C1 are motivated enough to learn more and go beyond the preparation and the level they've already achieved. So first of all, first and utmost, we have to think about what learners' actual interests are and what they expect. Not only expect to learn in our classrooms, but also expect to use their English for outside the classroom. So what is it they're preparing for except the exam? Then, of course, comes exam preparation, because this may be their next target in life. And then sometimes when we've achieved enough, we find it hard to actually push ourselves further. So we'll also talk about this today. So first of all, how do we connect to the interests and expectations of our learners today? I'd like to start with the words of John Lennon. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. So as we're thinking about exams and preparing for exams, we also need to remember that there's life happening outside, and we also have interests and needs out there. So English can also be used for communication on a variety of purposes. And you'll probably agree that today our learners use English a lot more outside the classroom than before. Their whole environment is just full of English. They play games online. They chat with friends from all over the world. Probably there's a variety of things to do online in English. And now, as we're locked indoors because of this unfortunate situation, we spend more and more time online. Even as I was connecting to Zoom, I thought, all the environment inside Zoom is also in English. So if you want to use an online tool for communication, you need to get familiar with the functions and the words for the things that you need inside this environment as well. So life is just as important as your next big goal, such as an exam, for example. So what can we do about this? Certainly, if we talk about course books that we prepare for learners who want to get ready for exams, we need to include real world, because this is something that will probably keep them motivated to move on and move further, because this is something that is probably sometimes more interest to them than the training we provide. And we have to have a safe mix of both, because they're here to prepare for a certain exam, but they also know that they want to use English in the real world. So such pages as you see here provide some extra authenticity to each unit, because they talk about things around the world that may be relevant to the topic, but also to the learners. And they may encounter these things in real life when they travel or when they explore the world online. And to support their curiosity, there's also video and audio included so that they can go beyond the page in the coursebook and see and hear something real for themselves. And of course, something very important today, we keep talking about 21st century skills these days because they have become the center of attention again suddenly after a bit of obsession with all sorts of corpora. We are now back to, yeah, corpora are useful, and we're going to come back to them at the end of my presentation. But we've suddenly realized that it's the learner who should be the focus of what we do in class. And learners have competencies to develop. So each real-world double-page spread, as you see here, is connected to a certain competency from the Cambridge Framework for Life Competencies. What is the framework? Let me just give you a quick overview of the framework itself. First of all, it's something developed for the teacher to be able to help the learner in the language classroom. So you'll see how learners can develop their English abilities and how these can be connected to lifelong skills that we all need to communicate in the open world. And this is how the framework is built inside. So you see the 6 key competencies, and then each of them is translated into a set of abilities or skills that we need to help our learners develop in order to build that competency. So we also know which way to take our learners in order to help them develop these. But first of all, we probably need to talk about what a competency is. And this is not just a skill, because it's very easy to mix up the two. We've used the two words for quite a while, almost interchangeably, but they need to be separated. The competency is a lot more than just a skill. It's a combination of knowledge, skill, and attitudes. So knowledge is, if you think to yourself now, can you come up with your own definition? You can also write in the chat, if you like, your own definitions of these 3 words. How would you define knowledge? How would you define skill? And how would you define attitudes? I'll give you just a few minutes to think about this and post something in the chat, if you like. And as you're typing something, I'll start revealing the answers I've prepared. So knowledge is something you need to know to do something well. And this practical application of knowledge is very important, especially in the language classroom, where whatever you're learning now needs to be practical and of use today and tomorrow. So knowledge enables you to do something better than you could before. Then a skill is a certain degree of mastery or fluency in using this competency. So you need practice to develop a skill. And finally, neither of these are very useful without the right attitude. It's the mindset you need to develop and in order to use the knowledge and skills and develop them. So basically, the combination of the 3 makes up a competency, as we refer to that in the framework. Then, well, back to exams, because this is where we normally start, and this is what brings our learners to our classrooms. When you have to teach an exam preparation class, you certainly know the level that your students are aiming for or aiming at. And the exam journey certainly begins with the introduction of the exam layout and strategies and question types and structure of the paper and so on. So as we introduce our learners to each exam question type, we give them more and more confidence to proceed to full task practice and also sit the exam when the time comes. Then strategies for exam success help learners to use their time wisely to achieve more within the time restrictions that we have for each exam. And then the more opportunities for practice we provide, the better. Because just like with anything in this world, in order to develop and build, you need to work again and again, and you have to practice again and again. You have to practice life skills, you have to practice in the gym. Well, it all takes practice, and then your muscles remember. So when you practice English inside and outside class, then your confidence also grows. So how can we structure the exam journey for our learners to be able to get there within the time available, ready to tackle each question in each part of each paper in the exam? There are two basic routes to this. One is developing the 4 skills in general, plus adding grammar and vocabulary practice on top, because we know that language is a combination of words and grammar. This is how we build ideas, but then we need the 4 skills in order to communicate those ideas. So we need to be able to speak and write, and also listen and hear what others say, and be able to read and decode the message on the page. So basically, we can start slowly with overall exposure to a certain skill, and then move to a specific part of a specific paper and give our learners training in that. So this gives us more possibilities to maximize student performance. And we also have to make sure that the exam training tasks are of the same level of difficulty and the same format as the learners will see in the exam. For this reason, a lot of teachers and learners preparing for examinations choose to use exam practice books with real tests, or past papers, for example, and this gives them another boost of confidence because they know they've done it before. And what we can do as teachers and publishers and examination material writers, we can provide useful facts and tips related to the exam. How do we know what tips and facts to share with our learners? You know that Cambridge has collected over years a vast collection of learner language examples, and these can be analyzed for a variety of reasons, such as typical errors that learners make in exams, so we can help them weed those out on their way to the exam day. We also know where learners have most difficulty and in the exam, so we can gradually help them build this confidence through exploring useful tips and facts about the exam based on our first-hand knowledge of what actually matters to exam takers and what gives them pain on the day of the exam, because, well, we've got this massive collection of samples of learner language. So then, as well as exam preparation, what else matters is language and skills. We still need to work on the vocabulary and grammar. Vocabulary and grammar are sometimes separated, and usually separated in course books, but there's a very fine line between them in reality, because if you talk about the lexical approach to teaching and learning, for example, then we can also talk about chunks of language that can be either categorized as grammaticalized lexis or lexicalized grammar. So there's a really thin line between them. But in exam classes, we choose to actually take the safe route for the learners, so they are also exposed to the basic terminology. So they know what these things are, although when they have to use grammar and vocabulary actively, learners don't actually have to label and call a tense and give it the right name. So we just label that. It's probably more useful even for the teacher to know where you're taking your learners, so that when you see those clear labels of what's being practiced here in terms of grammar. I've seen a lot of learners well able to use vocabulary and grammar in English at a very high level without being able to name what that is. So basically, this is something like passing a driving test, when first of all you have to remember all the moves and practice a lot of times, and then suddenly you realize you've forgotten what this is called, but you can do this practically. So C1 may be the level that learners achieve through a lot of practice also outside the classroom, and they only need more structured knowledge of the language when preparing for exams, because they may become smarter as they have to deal with each exam task and each paper, because they're aware of the grammar that's integrated into the skills practice tasks. So language and skills, rather than language and then skills, or skills and then language, they have to be taught together in an integrated way. So we may introduce a structure or certain target vocabulary through a listening passage or a reading passage, and then encourage learners to use the structures and lexis in their writing and speaking. This way, we give them both exposure and useful practice for the future, so they're more confident using the target language. And then this can be done in many different ways, but in this particular book, Open World, as you see, these are the examples from the C1 level for advanced learners. Learners can practice their grammar on the move, which basically gives them opportunities for language practice on the go. They can scan the QR code and prepare, learn about a certain language or grammar point on their way to school, for example, and then when the time comes to practice, they're already familiar with it, so they can just play those short explanation videos and become familiar with the target structure before they come into our class.
Grammar on the move. Comparative and superlative adjectives.
Hi. Where do you like going on holiday, and
Okay,
when?
so this is just the format that we use to introduce grammar structures. Okay, and then how do we actually challenge our learners to push themselves further beyond the level of the exam they're preparing for? As I already mentioned, C1 is the level when a lot of learners usually stop. They've achieved enough for a variety of reasons, for being able to communicate in real life situations. This is the level that is sufficient for academic studies, even at universities in English-speaking countries, and in a lot of international programs elsewhere in the world. So basically, most of the communication targets that learners might have had are already achieved by this level. And then what matters is that they don't stop, and they can do this in two different ways and dimensions. First, they can just dig deeper in at the same level, or go beyond it and see what's next for them to learn. And then most importantly, at this level and beyond, we need to help our learners to work with their beliefs, first of all, about language learning. Why are they doing this? What is it for them? Why should they go further? Why shouldn't they stop once they've achieved this high enough level? And so the question is, why do you do what you do? What's the purpose? And then there may be no clear answer for this, but some learners who have already achieved C1 you may hear from them something like, because I think I like to learn languages. So by this level, they have hopefully acquired this intrinsic motivation, internal motivation to go further, to explore, to become explorers in the language, just to push their limits. And then once we are clear about our aims, we need to structure the process. So we have to think about what do we have to do, and then the results that we want to achieve, and that's actually the what of language learning. So why, the purpose, how, the process, and what, the results we hope to achieve. And sometimes the what, the answer to the what question is not an easy one, because you don't really know what the results may be beyond this. Of course, you can look at another level in Cambridge exams and see how proficiency is different from advanced, how the C2 level exam is different. But for practical purposes, there aren't many learners in the world sitting the C2 proficiency exam, because there's hardly an organization requiring this. Well, all I know is teachers who are training to be Cambridge examiners, oral examiners, may want to pass that level of the exam, so that they feel even more confident than the exam takers at C1, for example. So basically, it's something where it's the level where you need to think more about why than what. So how do you push yourself further? First of all, we can just provide a space. In the same exam preparation classroom, there's always time and place, and we can arrange that, and we can find time for just meaningful language practice that does not target a specific paper or part of the paper. So we can just explore the language and enjoy the process. For example, as we're practicing some writing for C1, we may want to explore prepositional phrases which are already at a high level. So that gives us more flexibility when we write. Well, we can do without this, of course, if our only aim is exam preparation. But knowing this, we can expand our horizons, but also we can show off a bit on the exam day, because we integrate higher level structures, language, and vocabulary in our writing or speaking, and that's a good thing, because as you probably know, when you prepare for higher level Cambridge exams, something that is assessed separately in the speaking exam and also in the writing part is the grammar and vocabulary that you use, and use meaningfully but also flexibly, and you have to show a variety of structures and vocabulary items that you're able to use actively. So, well, that's just an extra bonus. You can do better than an average exam taker, and that's good to know for a learner preparing for an exam. Okay, then also I mentioned we have to give learners more and more practice as we go, as much as necessary. But we have different students with different motivation and also different levels within the same examination class. So we used to say something like mixed ability. Now we've just stopped doing that, because the ability kind of stigmatizes people and say, okay, I'm not as able as the other students in my class. So instead we say mixed level classes, and that's probably more accurate to say about learners within the same class. You know that having achieved a certain level, each of us can still be at different levels within the same level. So if we sit an examination, let's say at C1, our listening and reading skills may be a lot better or slightly better than our speaking and writing. So even within the same learner, there's a variety of levels, and that leads to a variety of needs. And we can never possibly tailor in a large exam preparation class, tailor everything to suit the needs of each and every learner in our class. So what we can do is just show them opportunities for extra practice and give them enough practice that they can do in their own time. So in the book here, you see we've included grammar reference and practice. So it's not just the rules of the language, but also an extra opportunity to practice them. There's a writing bank where you can explore writing skills and also write more. There's a speaking bank and so on. So there's lots to explore beyond what happens in class with the teacher. And then if that is not enough, and that's not usually enough, especially these days, learners and teachers want to go online and practice more. So there's a digital pack that comes with the course, and there's also a test and train feature in it where you can practice more. But there's a variety of media also on the website that supports language learners for this course. So you see that you can find videos, an ebook, so you can quickly refer to the same pages as you have in the printed book if you use one. Then you find teacher resources, to give you more ideas for practice and preparation. And then you also have a test generator and extra practice for language and exams. But that gives us also support and flexibility, because we can't possibly do everything with our learners within the time that's available to us, within the teaching hours that are allocated for this course. So a lot more should happen in our own time, especially learners' own time, and they should be able to do what they think they need in a more flexible way. So there's a website where you can find a lot more practice and preparation materials. So this is what it looks like if you open it on your mobile phone. Very user-friendly, easy to navigate, and lots of useful practice. That's most important. Right, so you can also take a test that looks and feels like the real one. And as you know, Cambridge exams and a lot of other international exams these days have online and offline, or pen and paper versions and online versions. So you can also do a computer-based test. And then that is even more useful if you choose to sit the computer-based version of the test one day. So you're also preparing in the same format and mode as the real exam. But because because the language and the skills are the same, this is useful for any exam preparation. It doesn't matter which you prefer or which is available in your country. So pen on paper, computer-based, doesn't matter. You still practice the language and the skills necessary for that exam and that level. All right, and then sometimes we have to go back and remind ourselves and others that there's something very handy, available for free online, that every teacher can use. But you may also, with C1 preparation classes, you may also show this to your learners and say, all right, go and explore for yourself. So there are two wonderful tools online, completely free. You can see the links down there, where you can search for vocabulary that learners need to know at a certain level. So here, for example, I used the C1 filter and found a list of words, and you see there are 2,410 results altogether for this level in the search window, and I can then go and explore each of the vocabulary items word by word, or I can look at guide words, groups, categories, and then I also find, when I click on details, I find example sentences where these are used. The best thing about this tool is it was built using language samples from learner examination papers. So basically, whatever someone wrote in their exams, sentences in essays or other writing tasks, they were later slightly improved if necessary, if there were little problems in them. But you may also find two sorts of examples here on this database. The original version that the learner at this level came up with in the writing part of the exam, and also the improved version where it's completely correct. So you see that the collection of words and grammar structures on the English profile database is learner generated. But the third useful item that you find in the details here is a dictionary example. So you have the best of both worlds. You have something that lexicographers took from a database, a corpus of language, which was produced by native speakers. Then you find a learner example and an improved version of the learner example. So that gives you enough to actually explore the world as it's used. And very often, when you find certain words that may also be familiar to learners at lower levels, when this vocabulary item is labeled as C1, then there's probably another meaning of the same word that learners already know, that they should know at this level, because you know that English is famous for, and many other languages actually, for polysemy or multiple meanings of the same words. So sometimes you shouldn't be misled by the fact that or is labeled as C1, because if you use it to express a reason, then you've probably reached that particular level. So the good thing about this database is that the items selected for the database have been used consistently and quite accurately by learners around the world. So we know that these are learner-generated items, and that gives us enough confidence, because we know that learners have been able to use this accurately in exam papers. So we can also do that if others can do this. So you see there are two tools that you can use completely free of charge here. One is the word lists that are filtered, that can be filtered by level, or you can combine a few levels if you like. And the other is the grammar profile, where you can see which structures learners should be familiar with at each level. So I've just selected C1 and C2 to show you here. All right. Well, and now I think I'm happy to answer your questions. If we have any, let's see what we have in the chat and also the Q&A window, if there are any other needs and questions that you might have today as a language teacher. All right. So would there be any questions? Gabriela, do we have any in the Q&A window or no open questions yet? So we'll just probably give a few minutes to all our participants to be able to type those in the Q&A window, so we can then explore your needs and talk about what matters to you rather than what I've decided to include in my talk. All right. Okay.
We can maybe start our break if there are no questions.
Yeah, let's just give a minute and then see where it takes us. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's just a little thank you here at the end that I found, not a question yet. But okay, I'm also happy to share the content of the presentation. I've sent the organizers a PDF file including the same material, so I hope this will also be available after the event if necessary. If someone is interested in some tiny details that I've included on the slides, then you're welcome to share it, of course. And yeah, all right. Good to be able to come back to Bulgaria after a while, even though it's a Zoom.
Virtual Andrzej.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrzej. Thank
you. Yeah, sorry, there's something in the Q&A.
Something in the chat, Andrzej.
Oh, sorry, there's a question in the chat. Let's just go to that quickly. Is it recommended for a teacher to take the C2 test if that teacher has majored in English? No, unless you want to know what it feels like. It's only recommended for those who want to be speaking examiners to Cambridge, but it's also only a recommendation, it's not a requirement. So, well, I would recommend the C2 level exams for two reasons. Why? One is to brush up your English a bit and become more confident than before, and then see what's in there in case you might have inquiries from learners who would also like to do that level of the exam. So now you know, you've gone through this. I know that a lot of teachers, wherever I go and when you speak to them, they say they first decided to pass the exams they were hoping to prepare for themselves. So they first got their own certificates, but as they were preparing for the exams, they found out what's in the exam and how to best deal with each question in each paper. So they just went through the whole process for themselves to be able to give better advice to their learners later on. So C2, I would just, if you like, I would just think about this as an opportunity to push yourself further. But this is never really a requirement, because yeah, you've probably learned enough as you were training to be a teacher. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's look at other questions. All right. Oh, that's just reactions to what I said. Okay. Right. So I think we can have a longer break then if there are no other questions. Let's just, yeah. See.
Thanks very much, Andrzej.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, well, let's wait until 12:15 or 2:15. Apologies. To relax you, Karen. Let's do your introduction in a different way, and I'll ask you to tell us about yourself, and because this is the first time I've seen you speaking, and I know that you've done some work with some of our authors like Herbert Buchter, and you've worked on some of our books like Kids Box and Green Man and Super Minds, I believe.
That's right.
But I don't have much. I know you're going to talk about phonics, but I don't have much about your background here. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about that and how you came to work with Cambridge.
Oh,
Or putting you on the spot now. You can say.
it was a long time ago now, actually. It must have been sometime in the early 2000s. And a friend of mine who was a rep told me that there was a project. He worked with me at the British Council.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that I was working on portfolios at the time, actually. And at the time, a lot of the new books were having a portfolio section. So I actually wrote portfolios for Colours and Kids Box and a few other things. And then I ended up doing all sorts of other material. So
you got involved with the publishing, the primary publishing team, and then from then on started linking up on new projects.
Mm.
And you've been working at the British Council though initially, and what about now?
Now I'm just working for myself, actually.
And you do training, and or is it mostly writing?
I do both. I've been to, the last place I went was just before lockdown. I went to Austria to do some training with the education department there. And I do a lot of work with storytelling, phonics, content-based, CLIL type stuff. And
marvelous. Okay, well, I mean, I know that, we've had quite a lot of the talks during this conference have been with the more advanced learners and with for secondary students. So it's nice to move back to the primary level or even pre-primary. Well, I think if it's agreeable to you, Maggie, I think we may as well hand over to Karen at this point. It's just literally 15 minutes past, I think now.
Yeah.
So the format again is that you will speak. If people have questions, they can put them in the Q&A. Obviously, we'll be monitoring the chat box as well, and try and pick up any feedback. But if questions come into the Q&A, and we'll have a little bit of time at the end if you want to take them at that point, or if not, then we can hang on to them and respond to people in the future. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Karen. I'll hand over to you, and you can share your screen as and when required.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, well, Dober den, and thank you for coming to this talk on phonics. I imagine that some of you do know quite a bit about phonics, and others maybe you don't know anything. So hopefully in this, I'll be able to cover the basic principles, but give something to teachers who are already teaching phonics as well. Well, I'll just go straight to the PowerPoint, and we'll start with an overview of what we're going to do today. So we'll start with a quick quiz, just to find out, so I can find out a little bit about what you know, and also to give you some of the key language that we use to understand and learn about phonics. Then we'll be looking at the reasons why phonics is actually everywhere, and move on then to understanding something about the alphabetic code. I don't know if you received the handouts by email, but if not, then don't worry, because I'll have the alphabetic codes on the screen, and you can get them from Maggie at a later date. We'll look at some tips and tricks for teaching phonics phases, and then we'll have time for some questions. So let's start with the quiz. All right, so now you need to write your answers in the chat. I seem to have lost the chat down the bottom here, Gabriella. If I go to more, I'll find chat, and I'll move that over here so I can see your answers. It's a little bit tricky with the participants down the side, but anyway, here we are. So, teachers, true or false? Or I don't know. Now you can see down here I've written this IDK for I don't know, and that's because for a long time when I was on WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever, I would see this IDK and I didn't actually know what it meant. It's kind of a lazy way to say I don't know. But on the other hand, There are lots of things that we don't know. So I would much rather that you just quickly wrote in chat if you don't know the answer to one of the questions in the quiz, rather than not saying anything at all, because the idea is to get your mind working. And also our children don't know lots of things. We don't know lots of things. Okay, so let's start with our first question. We don't have to use the English animal sounds because the words don't mean anything. What do you think? Do you think it's true, false, or you don't know? Oh, lots of false. Okay, I'm going to move the chat, and the answer is false. When we're teaching English, we should use the English animal sounds and all the other words that are related to noises. Question 2. The alphabetic code and the English alphabet are almost the same. What do you think? Great, there's an I don't know. It's tricky, not the same in our language. Great. All right, true, false. Keep coming with your answers, everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, I will tell you that the answer is false. The alphabetic code and the English alphabet are very different, not in terms of the letters, but in actually the number of patterns and in the sounds that are represented in the two. Okay, next question. Good to see everyone participating. Phonics starts with identifying sounds, not letters. What do you think? True, false, or I don't know? True, 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 true. Everyone knows this is true. We must first hear and identify the sounds in a language before we can attach them to a letter or a letter sound. Well done, everyone. Okay, next question. Friendly blends are letters that like each other. What do you think? Don't know, don't know. Great, I can teach you something. True. Okay, we're going to get the answer now. True. There are certain letters that we find together a lot, and these letters like each other. And for example, in the word friendly and in the word blend, we can already see two of these sets of letters that like each other. Last question, no, two more questions. Okay, here we are. Alternative spellings are different ways to spell the same word. What do you think? If you know anything about alternative spellings? This is kind of a tricky question. Okay, because the answer is false. Alternative spellings are different ways to spell the same sound. For example, if we take the word cloud and we take the word crown, we have two ways to spell the same sound. All right, and our last question. What do you think? Tricky words are tricky to teach. So this is a personal thing. What do you think? Is it true, false, or is it sometimes true for you? Okay, there's no real answer to this question. In my opinion, tricky words are sometimes tricky to teach because they don't fit with the pattern. So we learn this whole code and then we have to suddenly say, yes, but this word doesn't actually follow the patterns I've been teaching you. On the other hand, there are lots of tricky words and it's such a natural part of the language that we simply teach them as we go along. And at the end of this session, I'll show you some strategies that I use to help with this. All right, let's move on to phase 1 phonics. Phase 1 is that point where we are helping our children to hear the sounds of the language. Now, one thing, you're very lucky in Bulgaria, because the Bulgarian sounds, you have lots and lots of sounds. It's not very difficult for you to hear English sounds like it can be in other countries. But there are different sounds, and that's why it's very, very important to, for example, if you have a rooster in your story, a friend of mine told me that a rooster in Bulgarian says kukukurigu, kukukurigu. What about in English? Do you know what a rooster says in English? No. I can't see. Okay. Close. Okay, a rooster actually says cock-a-doodle-doo. So I think Bulgarian and English roosters are related because it's not too different. Right, so the idea here is that when we're telling stories to children or telling them about, oh, that train was so loud as it was passing by or whatever, we should be using, in our English classes, we should be using the English words. They're called onomatopoeic words. And here we have a little story, a very, very simple story. You know this story. The little chick comes out of the egg and it's very hungry and she can't see her mummy anywhere. So she goes from animal to animal in the farm asking, are you my mummy? So I think that some of these animals sound the same in Bulgarian and in English, but others don't. For example, a little chick in English will say cheep, 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 cheep. And a mouse will say squeak, 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 squeak. And a dog, woof, woof, woof. And a cat, there's a similarity here, I think, meow. And a pig in English is very different. A pig in English is very different from all pigs. It says oink, 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 oink. And a cow, moo. I think cows are very international. And finally, we have here our hen, which is saying cluck, 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 cluck. Yes, I'm your mummy. And here's a lovely worm for you to eat. So you can see when we're telling stories, it's quite important to learn and use the words. And I'll show you why now. Here we have some onomatopoeic words. I'll put them up for you. And we understand a lot about English spelling patterns by looking at these words. So you can see here we have the long oo and moo. So when we have a long sound, we often double the vowel. You can see it again here for beep, beep, how a car horn sounds, and you can see the E is doubled. So you can also see lots of short sounds, and you will see that they are what we call consonant vowel consonant words. Tick, tock, tick, tock. So we make a short sound using the short vowels. And we have other really interesting information here. Let's look at knock. Knock, 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 knock. You could say knock is a tricky word, but it's not really, because the KN is an alternative spelling for the N sound, as in knit and know and knees. So there's a lot of information, even in those simple words, which help us to understand the spelling patterns of English. So let's move on to initial letter sounds. And this is where we start matching our letters to the sounds. And we start at the beginning of words because that's the easiest place to hear them. So you can see, and we also love to start with the letter S because it's very easy to hear. It's very easy to slide the letter S at the beginning of a sound into the word. And there are lots of words that start with the sound. So one of the things that we do in the classroom is we start phonics with sound and picture cards. So we would say S is for snake, T is for tennis, and so on. But if you just see it once, it's not really enough. So there are lots of kinds of games that we can play in the classroom, and we can have a notice board. As you can see, this is a notice board where we add words that start with the sound. We start with the initial letter sounds, of course, because it's the easiest place to hear that sound and attach it. And also when children start to read, they see the space and then they see the new word, and then they can start, if they can just start the word, they have much more chance of being able to read through it. Okay, here is an activity that you might find in one of your course books. And this is from Super Safari. And it's a very typical activity in that the students learn to write the letter. They have some kind of a picture related. Here we've got jam. And then there'll be maybe a song, or there'll be a little funny rhyme or whatever, to get the children to keep repeating the sound so that they can identify the letter and the sound, which is called the letter sound. So what happens, you have this in your course book, and it can take maybe 3 minutes, the activity, and you're thinking, well, what was happening there? The point is, when you come to a phonics section, you may want to actually say, okay, let's revise our letter sounds. And S and T before you even go into your activity. And this is a great way to build your children's ability to identify the different letter sounds. So see the opportunity in the course book as a way to develop all their phonics abilities, not just the one letter sound that you see. And because we need to be able to switch between all the different sounds in order to start blending. So I don't know if you actually have your alphabetic code. It will look like this. And don't worry if you haven't got it, but if you have, you might want to look at it. Now, it's really, really important that you understand the alphabetic code, because there are things that you need to know before you start teaching a letter sound. For example, we just looked at the Super Safari j, j, j. All right, so maybe you're going to ask children to identify words that start with the j sound. So let's look here at the English alphabetic code. And we can see in the first column, second one down, we have our wonderful j as in jam. But what if you're saying, what starts with j, j, j? And you're talking to little children, not older ones who already know the letters. And they say, giraffe, teacher, giraffe. And you would say, yes, right. Because with phonics, we move along at the pace of the children, and we help them to understand as they go along. But you need to know, of course, that there are alternative spellings for the j letter sound. And you can see here at the end of a word, orange, it tends to be GE because the E here is silent. Bridge is a trigraph, DGE, for the same sound as in jam. So you can see here we have lots and lots of information, and I'm going to move on a little bit at this stage, because if we go to the next slide, you can see that one of the other things that we can teach through phonics are the voiced and unvoiced consonant sounds. So a lot of the consonants in English are paired. So here we have the b as in bat, and the p as in pig, and they are made in exactly the same way. We can ask our students to hold their fingers over their throat and say b, b, p, p, and they will feel the vibration. So it's a great way to help them to hear the different sounds. Okay, so once again, even as the kids get older, we were looking at Super Safari, which is for infants, but the children still need to identify the initial letter sounds. And here we've got a kids box page, and we've got a funny little rhyme, a horse and a hippo and a helicopter. And they probably have to say it, they can whisper it, they can shout it, they can say it in a sad voice, so they can say it whatever. But you can also play games at this stage. For example, I would say, oh, look, horse, hippo, they're both animals. Let's see, I've got a bag here. Let's play a guessing game. For example, I've got an animal in here that starts with D, D. What do you think? It could be a donkey or a dragon or a dog. No, it's a duck. A duck. And so I could say, I've got another animal in here that starts with the sh little letter sound. Shh. What could it be? That's right, everyone. It's a sheep, and so on. So we can extend these activities in a way that helps our students to understand phonics so much better, and we can have fun at the same time. So you can have a look at the contents of your phonics pages in your course book, and then think, how can I play a game before or after? Or what else can I do with this? And that's a way to help them to understand more and more about the alphabetic code and the way that it works. So I've just told you some games that you can play. There's I Spy, with my little eye, something beginning with k, k, k. That's right, it's a car. And the phonics bag, and you can also use, for example, all the same letter sound in a bag. Or you can have, if you're doing the letter sound s, I've got a bag here of things that start with the letter sound s. What's the opposite of a brother? What's the opposite of a brother? Can you say s? That's right, here she is, she's the sister. What else? I've got something in here that's hairy and it's got 8 legs. What could it be? It's a spider, and so on. So you can find different ways to encourage the children to hear the sounds, and then you can add the actual letter sound, the actual letter, to help them match the two. All right. So what I've got for you now is my first Jamboard. Here we are, we're in a pandemic still, and I imagine that a lot of you are teaching at home and in the classroom. And if you're doing that, you may be feeling really like frustrated, and partly because you don't want to plan 2 lessons, you need to have everything online. So I've made these jams for you. This is my Jamboard, and Maggie will send these to you. So as long as you have got a Google account, you can actually access all of these yourself, and you can take them and change them and do whatever you like with them. I'm so proud of all our teachers who are out there teaching in this pandemic, and I know it's really, really hard for you. So let's have a look at the first Jamboard. And as you can see, this is practicing initial letter sounds with the letter S. So what I would do here is I would go through all of, what's this? What's this? It's a tree. And here we have a cat. And what's this? The sun. And of course, if you have very little ones, you can take out some of these. You might just want to have 3 or 4 different possibilities. But I love Jamboards, and you can make them so easily. You can make your own if you want to. So then you can ask a child either at home or in the classroom to move one of the objects into, that starts with the letter sound S, into the circle. And this is a really important point. You remember what I said about jam and giraffe? Again, circle, if a child says circle, circle starts with S, it does. It's later when we learn that it's an alternative spelling that we can tell them that they write it with the C before I and E and Y. So to make your own Jamboards, it's so easy if you want to, but like I say, here we have a whole stack of initial letter sounds and then moving on to identifying 2-letter sounds to help them to hear the difference. And that is something for you to, that's something for you to use at home. Not at home, sorry, in school, although the children can use them at home as well. All right, so we move on now to blending. Blending is really important, and it's super exciting when you start to watch the children move on from just being able to identify 1-letter sound to being able to blend them all together to make words. So once again, we need to go back to our alphabetic code in order to understand how blending happens. And if you have your paper and you turn over to the other side, you will see that on the other side we have the alphabetic code for the vowel sounds. And when we first learn to blend, we start with just the short vowel sounds, a, e, o, a. Because we can make lots and lots of CVC words, which is super easy to read. But in order to be able to do that, students need to be able to hear the short vowel sounds, and they're not easy to hear in the middle of words, or they're not easy to hear in the middle of words. So I've got, what we have to start is by getting them to hear them at the beginning of words. Now, there are not a lot of words, of course, in the language that start. So I've made you another Jamboard here. So Jamboard, here we go. This is a Jamboard to help students identify the short vowel sounds at the beginning of words so that they can actually move on to being able to blend them in the middle of words. So you would say, what's this? Is it an apple, an apple, an ipple, an opple, or an apple? Children will find that quite amusing. And of course, they know it's an apple. So you can get them, or you can move the a. Unfortunately, in Jamboard, there's only this one font, but maybe we can speak to them, because as you can see here, this a is not the a that we really like to use in phonics. We like to use the a like this, which is easier to read, but children need it for text anyway, so I'm not that unhappy about it. And so we can move on through here, and you can see there are several different ways to help children through giving them this first sound. But remember, it's always short. So we don't want to say insects. No, we must say I. These are all the cut off vowels. So we've got a, I, o, a. They're short. So we need to make sure that we're pronouncing them correctly to help our students to hear the difference between the long and short vowel sounds, and so that they can blend correctly. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. I hope you are all, I'm going to have a quick look, but I really am going to thank you so much for all of your questions, and I hope that Gabriella is able to pick out any that are like super important, because I want to move on and get through quite a bit of material at the moment. So you can see in our course books when we're learning about CVC words, here we've got our f, I, sh, And as you know, sh is a digraph. It's one sound, but 2 letters are used to make this sound. So we're still here in CVC words, 6 big fish. And another really great thing that you will see here is we've got the x, x. Sometimes 1 letter sound represents 2 phonemes, as in the x, x. So we have to teach these together so that children can identify and read the words. And let me just move on, because I have another activity here for you to use in the classroom on your screens, which means that both your students at home and in the classroom will be able to access the same information. So let's go back to the Jamboard and to the simple decodable words. So when we're teaching children to read through words, yeah, we have to make the sounds, and we would start by separating each sound. So we've got ap, 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 map. For some children, this is difficult. It's not easy. Okay, so it takes a bit of practice. But also, not only are they learning to read, but at this stage you can also be helping them to learn to spell, because if they can spell as they're learning to write a lot of these simple words, then they'll be well on their way. And children love to learn to read and write. I found that they just realize it's so important. And so you often find that they're really interested in this kind of thing. And there are also some really great things online, which I'm sure a lot of you have found, like the Alpha Blocks and Starfall. But in fact, I'll send Maggie a list of great websites for you as well, so she can pass them on when she passes on these jams. In this one, what I've done is I've separated by color. I've separated out the vowel sounds, and I've put just at the front the words to start the beginning and the end, so that kids are learning that the sounds at the beginning and the middle and end of words are that they can identify them separately. So you could say, what's this? Is it a bog? Or is it a cog? Or is it a dog? No, teacher, it's a dog. So, is it a dag or a dog? What do you think? Oh. So by doing all this, we help them all the time to be hearing the different sounds. And there are several of these here, and I'm going to just not do them all, because we've got, like I say, we've got a lot to get through, but I want to just show you a few things here that are quite important about phonics. See, we've got lots and lots of CVC words that we can teach, and we want to start getting them to see them and to read them. You can play lots of games with these as whole words as well. I'll show you one in a minute. But here we have our famous x sound. So we've got b, ox. And again, we have the CK, because at the end of a word, we tend not to like just the C or the K. And this is an alternative spelling for the k sound. So we have 3 spellings for the k sound. And then later there are more, but we build slowly when we're teaching our children. So we don't want to overwhelm them with all the information. And so here's another digraph, consonant digraph, the sh, which is the S and H is a different phoneme to the S and the H. So that's basically something that you need to teach as well. Okay, now, once the children have started to learn to blend, and you can play lots of blending games with them if you have the Jamboard, or if you have them in the classroom, they can be like putting bits of, like, you can have the cards and they can make the words as you say them. And another fun game is bingo with, you can have, say, 15 words or so. And when I play bingo with them, I give them the bingo grids and little squares so that they can use them again and again, and they can swap them around. But on the actual cards that they pull out, I always have not just the word, but the picture. So if children are slow at reading, or that they can still say the word sun, everybody's sun, so that everybody's included, regardless of where they are on their reading journey. And so if you do play this game, you can also play it online, but I haven't worked out how yet. Okay. So now we're moving on to something really exciting, and these are the friendly blends I was telling you about, because this really opens up a whole new set of words to our students when they can start mixing these consonants together at the beginning and the ends of words. So we'll go back to the Jamboard. I'm using the jams as a way to show you. Oh, can you see that? I'm just going to stop sharing because I'm not sure if I shared it correctly. So here we go. Let's go to our friendly blends. Now, the important thing about friendly blends is, trying to reconnect. What's happening? Okay, here we go. That when we say the words, we can't say them as two separate letter sounds. We can't say or g, because doesn't sound like, it's not a blend. So that's why it's so exciting at this stage, because we start with the fr, cl, sp, bl, gr, fl, cr. So we can, as you can see, let's move on. I'll show you with an example. We can say, okay, kids, is it a crog, or is it a flog, or is it a frog? Oh, teacher, it's a frog. All right. So you can see that part of the trick is blending the initial friendly blend. And if we move on here, you can see it's really important. St, cr, pl, and all of these are words. Stop, crop, plop, for example. So there are so many words. A lot of them are more difficult to actually have a picture for, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. So I'm going to move on. First of all, we start with our friendly blends at the beginning. And look here, this is a little bit tricky because the CK at the end is not a blend, okay? That is a consonant digraph for the K phoneme. So, but as we move on, you can see this is important. Okay, when we start to teach the friendly blends, we can also start to teach the long vowel sounds. For example, here we have E, as in green. And so because they don't have to, they see the picture and they're reading the beginning of the word, it's a way to help them to start seeing new digraphs for the long vowel sounds. And here we've got again the A as in aim, train, and ow, flower. So we start to get them to read through words even though they don't actually have perhaps they don't actually know all their alternative spellings yet. And of course, then we also have friendly blends at the ends of words. Okay, so that's another jam. And now we're going to move on to my favorite part, the most exciting part. How are we doing for time? Okay, not too bad. Okay, just before, you can see that this comes up in the course books, of course, as well. So this is Kids Box, and don't forget here we have got, there's always a workbook activity as well. But as I was saying, just because you're doing the friendly blends with the S, you can see all these different ones here. It's so amazing. S is a super friendly letter. If we move on here, we can play all kinds of games. We can say, okay, what are the friendly blends? If I was doing this with very young children, maybe I would only have 3 or 4 friendly blends. And I'd say, it's a competition, everyone. How many words can you find with the fr blend, with the gr and the tr blends? And if you can get them in teams, one day we'll be working in teams again, then they can help each other and get points for all the different words that they know for each friendly blend. Okay, so now we can move on to phase 3 phonics, and this is where we start to learn about the alternative spellings. So let's move on. Again, if you have your worksheet, keep your alphabetic code with your lesson plan. And when you look in your course book and you see that you've got a phonics section, you can have a look and see what else you could do around that same area. And this is, as you can see, we're going into the long vowel sounds. And sometimes this is where it gets a little bit tricky because, for example, the O sound in English is very short, but we also have the long O sound, as in goat and boat and yellow and home. And this is what we're teaching when we teach alternative spelling. So let's look here at the A, as in A. What did you say? And you can see at in the middle of the word here, we've got rain, A-I, but we have an alternative spelling, and at the end of a word, or we tend to change the I to a Y because it looks nicer, it looks pretty. So we've got day here. And then the other thing that we do, which is really exciting, is we have what's called a split digraph, which is an alternative spelling where the consonant drops down into the middle and then the E at the end tells us that that A is long. So you can see it has in lake. And if we move on here, seen. And also in the I, in the I digraph down here, we split it, and mine, you will be able to see that once again, the consonant's dropped in the middle and the E at the end tells us that the I is long. So let's move on, because I can explain this to you. First of all, you have lots of help in your course books. And here we have got some words, pie, like, white bike. I like my white bike. But you will also find that sometimes when you're just doing a text, you're going to find, if you're doing something on food, I like rice, for example. Look at the pie. You might find that there are lots of words. And in the class, what I would do is I come across a text and I suddenly see that there are lots of split digraphs for long vowel sounds. Like, oh, look, everyone, look. I say, look, there's pie. And here we've got rice. Look at this. It's the same sound. Can you hear it? And so in this way, as you're going through a simple reading text or a poem, you can help the students to identify the different ways to spell the same sound. Okay. So once again, here we have the course book has there's always worksheets to go with it, and you can play lots of games around these kinds of things. If you have little flashcards, you can ask them to match the pictures and the words and so on. And I'm going to take us back now to the phonics activity in the Jamboard for this, because you have this, so it's a great place to start. How are we doing for time? Perfect, we've got 15 minutes. Okay, so this is a great way for me to show you the importance of learning the alternative spellings for the words. And here we've got an activity, as you can see, for, what is it? What sound is it? It's the A sound, A, as in rain. It's the A sound. So I've already taught this sound, and now I'm going to be telling them, okay, look at the different ways we can spell A. Look at all these words. We can start by looking at the pictures. Say, rain, plane, cake, snake, and train. Okay, who wants to match a word to a picture? I do, teacher, I do. Train, train. Here we go. Great. All right. So we can, this is something that, because it's on the Jam, you can do it both at home and in the classroom for everyone to see. So I hope you'll find it useful. And again, you'll see here for the E sound is long, and we have tree, peas, team, feet, read, cheese. And so we would go through and say all the words and then ask the children to match. And again, we've got the A, E, I, O, U sounds. And here's, I think I is my favorite, because we've got our pie. And then when we split it and we drop the consonant in, as in race, it's actually the two same vowels. So it's like super easy for kids to see that what the split digraph is with this actual letter sound with this. Okay, we've got the O sound, as in coat, goal, goat, boat, nose, snow. And you can see here we have got the OW, which, if we move on, you will see has the same spelling, has two sounds. So we have to teach that. It's all a matter of progress. And now we're, you know, like we started with infants, with going through our letter sounds with pictures, and then we moved on to our digraph consonants, and then we moved on to our digraph vowel sounds, and we're moving up in the primary years. So if in your school you could have a little program, use your course books to help you to map it, but also you may want to use other methods just to make sure that you spend some time with this, because this is how children learn to read and write in English and to spell. And when I was growing up, we didn't have phonics, but I still learned through phonics. It just took a bit longer, because you cannot learn to read and write without understanding the alphabetic code, which is why all of you need to understand the alphabetic code so that you can teach your children how to read and write and spell in English. Okay, so here we have the oi sound, oi, and the ow sound. I put them together because we're starting now, we've moved up another level. We want our students to be able to hear the difference between two sounds. And so you can see here the ow, as in clown. Here we have the picture of our clown. I'll move it down. This is a very common spelling of the ow sound, but it's also the spelling of the O sound, as in slow and grow and snow. So other activities that you can do is you can have all words with the same spelling pattern, but two columns where they have to put, for example, the word into the correct sound. Okay, here we've got the R and the OR letter sounds, and the last one is very, very important. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes here. This is the sound, as in blender, mixer. It's the sound in girl, bird, first, shirt, but also purple, thirsty, Thursday. And why it's so important is in its long form, it's the sound, but when you shorten it and cut it, it's the N sound in words like sister, brother, mother, father, tractor. And it's also the short sound in computer, yeah, 2 times in computer. So a lot of words, when we don't actually stress the syllable, it has the little sound, and that sound is the sound shortened cut. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint for our very last thing, which is tricky words. Tricky words. Okay, so when we're teaching a tricky word, there are things. Now I'll just use this PowerPoint page here to show you. For example, sun. Is sun a tricky word? No, it's not. Can you find the word that rhymes on the page with sun? Is it zoo? No. Is it keys? No. It's one. Such a simple word as one. The first letter of the word, first number has to be tricky. I mean, actually, it's not super tricky. It follows a different spelling pattern that you don't probably even teach until the first of elementary school or later in high school. But it is a pattern. It's just a pattern that's not as common. So we teach it as a tricky word when we're teaching our children. So I can say to them, one. Okay, look at that, one. How would you say it if it was not tricky? And it would be O-N-E, one. Okay, so we can say, yes, but it's not. It's one. So then you look at the word and you say one, one, one. So that's drilling and repetition. And then matching it to words that sound the same. In this case, sun, one. Then you've got all kinds of rhyming songs and chants. Yes, I'm the only one under the sun, and so on. So you'll find poems and chants. And when you're doing this kind of work, you help them to identify, say, oh, look, there it is. There's that tricky word. How do we spell it? Then finally, you can do some little spelling tests and so on. And you can also have a tricky word box or board or activity. So when you're doing your morning routine and it's time for some phonics, and you've done all the other things, or you can even do it like once a fortnight or whatever, depending on your teaching situation. You can say, okay, it's time for the tricky word box. And you go through and you hold up the words and you get students to help you to pronounce them correctly. So if we go back, there is one more jam for you to use. I forgot to take that back. Okay. And that's the tricky word one. There's not a great deal here, but if you're at home, you can go through all of these. One, me, two, go. These are all tricky words. And on the other side, snow, sun, zoo, and see. These are all simple decodable words. So you can ask students to draw a line to match. And there's another one of these for some more tricky words. And then you might want to put the tricky words into a box and play a game. And then you could say, okay, we're going to have a tricky word spelling test at the end of the week. And then you can ask the students to write the words and so on. So once again, ways to teach tricky words. Remember, a tricky word is any word that you haven't taught the rule to yet. So circle is a tricky word until students understand that the C can also be pronounced as the sound, and the is a spelling pattern, IR, for the sound, and so on. So the main thing about tricky words is to not be afraid of them, because they're just there and they're just part of the language. And that takes us to our question time. So I think Gabriella is going to help me with this.
Yes, there are two questions actually in our chat box. The first question is, what's better, to teach the letters first and then the phonics, or teach them at the same time?
Okay, so I think if I understand correctly, you mean this is A. This is the, in the alphabet, this is the letter A. That's the name. And the sound that it makes is ah, ah, ah. If I'm correct, and that's what you mean, I tend to teach them together. You have all your alphabet songs, for example, well, A, B, C, D, and the name of this letter is A. What's more, later on, knowing that this A is the name of the letter A, the name of the letter A is also the sound for the long vowel sound, is really helpful. So I often do, for example, you can have a little hand puppet with a, o, a, e, I, o, u. A, E, I, O, U are the names of those letters. So there's nothing to be afraid of. I teach them together. But the thing to remember is a child cannot blend by saying the name of the letter. So just the point is to be very, very clear. That's the name. What's the sound? What's the sound? And the sound is ah, as in yeah, k, at. So they can't say the letter C, but children don't get confused very often, I've found. I hope that's answering your question. If not, please just write in the question box again.
Thank you, Karen. And there is a second question. In your opinion, Karen, shouldn't there be a supporting textbook in spelling which may complement the phonics program in schools? I'm saying this because I have been searching for such a textbook at Cambridge, but I have not been able to find one. However, some publishing houses based in the US offer such series.
Well, that's a very interesting question. And I do agree, a spelling book is a great thing to have, because there, if, for example, you can use it, there are quite a few of these phonics spelling books around. They're huge because this is the way children learn to read and write. So absolutely, use your spelling books alongside. For example, do you remember the example for the I in the course book? I like my white bike. You will find a page in your spelling book all about learning how to spell different words with the I sound. If you have a phonics spelling book, you can use a page from that at the same time. It's a great question, and perhaps Cambridge will consider having this kind of book in the future. But they're out there, so you have got the material if you need it.
Thank you, Karen. So these are all of the questions that we've got.
There's lots of complimentary comments in the chat box.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Very well received, and lots of very positive feedback from experienced teachers. So that was really nice to hear.
I'm so pleased. I'm so happy. I love teaching phonics. I think it's just so important. And so I really hope that you'll enjoy combining the phonics in your course books with other elements of phonics that you will be able to develop by yourself and with other teachers. And I also hope that the Jamboards will be really, really helpful for you in these difficult circumstances that you're teaching in at the moment.
No, I think that was really practical, and I think, you know, teachers will have taken a lot out of the session, and they've clearly enjoyed it. So thank you very much, Karen, for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure you'll be asked to do other similar sessions for similar events. I'm sure people will want to see you again.
I'd be
Yes,
delighted.
I'm sure about this. It was really interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the session.
It's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. I can see Christian's here, though.
Hi, Christian.
Oh, good.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
So we have Christian Zhelev. I'm not quite sure how I should be pronouncing your surname.
That's perfect, Zhelev, yeah.
Okay, very good. So Christian is going to give us our last session of the day. And as we did last time, I think perhaps I'll take the opportunity to ask you to introduce yourself so that you can do it in a way that's appropriate. But I do know that you're an experienced teacher, and I do know that you work in universities and as well as in your own language school, and that you're teaching language at all different levels, and you're preparing your pupils for Cambridge exams. So that puts you in a very strong position to represent an excellent talk at this session. So if I hand over to you for the last session, Christian, and again remind people to write questions in the Q&A if they want a proper response. Otherwise, very happy to see things in the chat. And so we'll see you at the end of the session. Over to you, Christian.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you so much. You presented me basically, as you said. I have been teaching English for several years, and not only English, but also some subjects in English, which could be useful. I've worked with senior students, with junior students, with different types of students. And what I'm going to try to do today is to present a blend, a mixture between what the students want, what they really need, and what is feasible to offer concerning the contemporary teacher. I will try not to bore you, but feel free, of course, to ask any questions. I will try to answer them as fast as I could, and I can see them. Maybe at the end of the session, I will leave some time for the Q&A session. Also, you can type in the chat as Duncan said, and so on. So, without further fuss, my basic idea when as of today, just a sec, yeah. Something dropped. My basic idea was to present how could the contemporary teacher equipped the student, no matter the level, with sufficient knowledge on a level corresponding to the highest standards of the Cambridge University. So that's why I called my session teaching in an interactive way and engaging the students in learning and in the content creation process. I would like to start with several questions which, according to me, are key questions that each and every teacher should ask himself or herself concerning the teaching and the learning process. Is it important, according to everyone here in the room, where do you teach, when do you teach, how do you teach, what are your teaching techniques, or what are the methods that you follow, and who do you teach to? Are they junior students, let's say? Are they teenagers, which are sometimes difficult to please, or are they adults as well? Because as we know, as experienced teachers, the techniques, the approaches to the classroom and to the students is different each and every time. What I can say as a start is that there is no single best way. There is no single best way, and adaptability and adjustability are the key terms here. Because at the end of the day, where do you teach? Do you teach in the classroom present here? Sadly, my classroom is empty now because of the COVID-19 situation, but we quickly adapted to the virtual classroom. And I think that teachers all over the world did a great job here concerning their adaptation. But how could we possibly make this, how could we possibly make all these virtual or real classroom, as I call them, work in our favor as teachers? Does it matter where we teach? Of course, if we teach in front of the screen, as we are now, it is highly demanding thing that that you in some way should engage the audience. You should engage the audience. And it was at the beginning of my teaching online, it was a common thing to see those black screens or those lovely pictures of my students and no feedback. And it was at the end of the day difficult for me to get this feedback from them. What I did was what I did was that I started implementing what we are going to talk about today, the so-called movie education, to make them active participants in the digital environment, in their environment, because actually we are teaching to, especially when it comes down to the growing up generation, to the teenagers, we are teaching to these digital natives, which are, by the way, not always so native concerning the digital, but in the basic trend, says that they are digital native. They are born with technology in their hand, and it was expected that everything will go smoothly concerning exactly the educational process, with all the pros and cons of the digital environment. But at the end of the day, some of the students felt not so engaged in the educational process, and we as teachers should find the place of each and every one of them in the classroom, virtual as it is, or a real classroom. So when do we teach? Of course, it matters when do we teach. Do we teach in the morning, in the evening, from this elementary standpoint? Is it the beginning of the term or of the semester? Is it at the end? So the good teacher must be able to push hard in some aspects, and to lay low in some other aspects. How do we teach concerning our teaching techniques? Do we prepare students for certificate exams, for example, or do we prepare them for the state exams, let's say? It's basically, my approach has always been the same. Teach in a way that if you check, and this was my maximum, also my leitmotif, teach in a way that if a teacher after you, let's say the next day, the following day, enters the classroom, he or she should be able to monitor the progress of the learners, and should have a clear path, towards the end of the course. As we said, who do we teach? Of course, matters. Of course, at the end of the day, you can see. But what is invaluable here is the progress that you see in the eyes of your students. At the end of the day, why do we teach? Why do we teach? You should ask each and every teacher, according to me, should in order to teach in an interactive way, should ask why himself or herself, why do I do this job? Do I like it, or do I do it just for the money? That's why I have put the key question here, why. It is the key that combines everything. And if if the teacher or the lecturer is ready and willing to collect, to give and collect, everything will be fine at the end of the day, experienced or not so experienced. For that reason, I will try to make the speech suitable for the teachers who start their career, who are at the very beginning, at the threshold of their career, and who are actually experienced teachers. Because they have seen a lot, they know a lot, they have rich experience in different teaching techniques. That's why I will not put theoretical backgrounds here. Why do we teach? Why do we teach? Another aspect of this question is, do we prepare our students for something? What is the final goal of our course? To prepare them to be a good teacher and to collect feedback. What is important and what I want to emphasize here on is the constant feedback throughout the educational process. That is vital. That is vital for the outcome of each and every one. That is vital for all the student success. The constant feedback from the students, starting from the reaction on their faces when you're teaching, reaching to the dizziness or sleep, or those students who are at the end of the classroom and are happily sleeping while you are teaching. This is all important. Take some elementary things like drop down a technique, for example, to wake up the class, drop down something which they do not expect you to drop down, be a bit clumsy, and this will revitalize the audience. or make some kind of pause as if you are structuring your thoughts, or while you are structuring your thoughts, make some kind of pause and ask, what was I saying? And some of the more energetic students will immediately respond, no matter in digital environment or in the real classroom. Be well aware and be well advised that actually such questions that present the teacher as a person who is structuring the thought, he might not be structuring the thought at all, might be just provoking some attention. So those techniques from psychological point of view, they have according to me and according to my practice, they have a tremendous effect when the students lose the concentration, lose the focus. For that reason, I emphasized on the feedback, and it is important when it comes down to the feedback to follow your classroom all the time, and sometimes to let the steam go off when it is necessary. What I want to emphasize more in this session today is the psychology and the learning process. When it comes down to the psychology, there are several psychological factors that predetermine the attention, predetermine the overall performance of our students in the digital environment as well as in the real classroom. More challenging, I do not argue that this is more challenging in the digital environment for the teachers, concerning the execution of the lecture or of the lesson. But when it comes down to psychology and the learning process, I could state that significant place in this process is the perception of the students, how they perceive the entire blend of information, the entire mixture of information that you provide them with. When it comes down to perception, I mean that the perception is the process by which people, not only students, but each and every one of us, including each and every one of us, perceive information. And what is more, perception here, I want to emphasize, is that this is a process in the mind. No matter whether you're a student, teacher, lecturer, doctor, or whatever, by which process you select information, you organize this information, and you interpret this information in order to form meaningful picture of the surrounding world. And in this case, meaningful picture of the things that the teacher is currently teaching. And I have absolutely on purpose selected 3 things here on the slide. You can see, and I will try to answer the question, why are these things important in the learning process? As I repeated several times, in the digital environment, as well as in the real world, as I call it, environment. This is first of all, this is the selective attention of our students. Willingly or not, if we lived in a perfect world, all of the students would have we would have all students undivided attention. But practice has shown, actually, and the real world has shown, that this does not happen always. Why? This is normal process. Do not blame your students that they do not pay attention the whole time. It is impossible. As I'm talking now, most probably half of you are paying half attention and the other are listening with 1 ear or half a ear or something like this. This is because of how our brains are structured. And if we as teachers understand this, it will be easier for us to understand our students, because the teacher-centric approach is gone. It is somewhere in the past, according to me, and the student-centric approach is what is contemporary in our teaching methodologies and in our teaching practices. And when it comes down to selective attention, this is something very basic. This is something very elementary to understand. Yet again, many people do not fully understand, and many teachers do not fully understand this process that flows in the brain of our students. Because selective attention, this is the tendency of people to screen out most of the information to which they are exposed. And if you teach, let's say, if you teach new vocabulary, if you don't select properly the words, explaining the new word, the selective attention of the student will be gone in a few seconds, because he or she or they do not fully understand what you are talking about. Using plain comprehensive language is the first step there. And the second thing which is important for the selective attention is actually that you as a teacher have the leading role to structure well what you are presenting at this very moment. What I mean here is, for example, give the students some kind of hints at the beginning or intrigue them in some way. For example, you are teaching present continuous tense, let's say. At the moment you are teaching present continuous tense, and you say, I am teaching, let's say, I'm teaching. And a few weeks ago, you studied present simple. And you can say, do you see something different? Let's say a few weeks ago you said, we use the auxiliary verb do, does in the present simple. And you can intrigue them. Why am I now using this? I am teaching, let's say. To notice the auxiliary to be, to emphasize on this. And they will say, oh, some of my students said, oh, you are using the tense in the wrong way. I said, maybe, but we will see that in a while. And then present the drive formula to be plus verb plus inc or to be plus gerund or whatever. Or if you are teaching, let's say, continuous, the difference between present simple and present continuous, and you should grab your students' selective attention, and you should say, no matter, here the age, according to me, is significantly irrelevant if you teach teenagers or adults, let's say. You should say state verbs. What are those state verbs? Do we know them? How do we know them? Can you elicit those state verbs together with the class? You can ask simple question. Have you ever heard, let's say, I'm knowing? No, you have never heard, because know is not used in continuous is not used in continuous tense, because it reflects the state actually. You either know or you don't know. And there is a common misunderstanding. With the verb understand among my students often. And I say, they say, but when you say this is a state verb, isn't understanding a process? And we start explaining, yes, understanding, but I am beginning to understand is different from I understand. And there they grab the notion, let's say. And this leads to my thoughts of the second thing that is here on the slide concerning the selective retention in the brain of our students. I'm talking about the psychological factors here. What do you understand as selective retention? Selective retention actually is the tendency. Selective retention is the tendency, our tendency to remember good points about things that we favor and forget good points about similar things. For example, I'm going to give you an example with the brands here. If you are a fan of a certain brand, let's say, of mobile phones, okay, you favor, let's say, brand A, in order not to sound like an advertisement. If I ask you at this very moment, can you tell me 10 good points about the brand you favor? Most probably you will list them. And if I ask you, can you tell me 10 good points of a competing brand? It will require heavy thinking, and most probably you won't be able to list immediately 10 good points. So when it comes down to learning and educational process, if I may transfer this figure into the learning process, students will always remember better subjects that they favor. And whether they will favor the subject, according to me, it is a matter of a good presenter of a good teacher, as well as some other factors, as well as many other factors, but the teacher is the center of their understanding, whether they will love the subject or not. I have had, let's say, many students who came from different backgrounds and from different schools, and some of them said, I really hate English, I don't want to study this language any further. Then it's time for the teacher to step back, to create, to try to seed passion for the language into the learner. Or maybe the adult. Some of the adults are with a very clear path. They come and they say, I want to speak, I want to start speaking. And you start explaining, there is no such thing as I want to start speaking. You should know this basic, and this basic. Be open-minded, be honest to your students. Tell them what the situation, the real situation is. Don't punish them. Don't shout at them for their mistakes, let's say, or something like this. Try to be supportive when it comes down to their mistakes. Repeat several times if necessary, but make sure that you have again the selective attention of our students. What is more to be added here is the selective retention. This is the selective distortion, and this is the tendency for people to interpret information in a way that will support what they already believe in. So if our students believe this is the right path, this is the right way, we are going to the right direction, and the teacher is constantly encouraging them, it will be okay for them. They will feel sure, they will feel confident, and the results won't be late. Of course, do not step back when it comes down to work that needs to be done, or do not lower. My basic advice here is do not lower the workload. Many teachers refuse, let's say, refuse to see this. You can see that they are overloaded. The students are overloaded. Don't push them any further. Or what is more important, don't make them. What is more important, make them think that you don't push them any further. Say, okay, I have provided you with 10 pages of homework. 10 pages, 10 tiny pages. Turn it into a joke, let's say. 20 pages. I'm famous, let's say, for giving large homeworks. My students tend to write them because they know that this is the minimum criteria. And if you set, what comes up in my mind here is that if you set the criteria high, very high at the beginning, high but achievable, of course, you can afford yourself to lower them at the later stages and achieve the maximum at the same time, achieving the maximum of the maximum potential of your students. As I said about the selective distortion, give them hints to support their beliefs. That is the key here. Give them hints to support their beliefs. Okay, and since another key point here, especially in the digital environment, is how do you understand content and what is content? Content in the digital environment is the first point that I would like to address here. When it comes down to content in the digital environment, you can find thousands of tones of content, relevant or not so relevant. Each and every one of you actually in the social networks, let's say, in the websites, in the comments that you leave, in the likes in the social network platforms, we all create content, digital content in this case. And this content needs to be managed, let's say. But our basic role here as teachers is to point out the relevant content, because you will, some of my students would say, I have watched a YouTube tutorial about this, and I think that I understood it. Encourage, don't say to the student in this case, don't watch anything that I haven't told you to do. So tell him or her, can I see the tutorial? Watch the tutorial together, or can you send me the tutorial via mail? See, and in this way you will see what are the potholes, let's say, what are the weak points of this tutorial, and converting this digital content from your weak point to your strong point is the basic idea here. Because let's say you teach a lot of students. Some of them said, I watch tutorials about this. Can you send me via mail, via Viber, via chat, whatever, via Zoom if you're teaching here? Can you send me this content so I can review it, have a look at it later? And don't use the word review because they tend to get scared sometimes. And next time we'll comment on this content that you are talking about. You can see whether the content is relevant that they are watching. You can see whether this content fits your idea of presenting step by step, let's say a certain grammar unit. And you can say, yes, you can do this, you can take this from this tutorial, but for now, don't have in mind this and this part of the tutorial. Naturally, you will expect the question from the student, why should I not mind this? And you can say, let's say, later on, we will study. By this, by doing this, you provoke the interest of the learner that something follows, something is going to happen and will happen in the future. That they expect the course to be upgraded constantly, periodically, step by step. Show them the path and tell them what lies ahead, but do not explain everything in a rush. And this tutorial will be useful, let's say, or save this tutorial, it's just fine. Save this tutorial. And after 5 months, let's say, when this course is over, we'll watch it again, analyze it. When I teach subjects which are to proficiency students, let's say, I make them, for example, I teach some subject in English. I make them do the following thing. Somebody raised a hand, I see. Shall we pass the floor to someone and I will continue after this, or at the end of the...
We can take questions maybe at the end, or feel free to type it in the chat box.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, or in the Q&A box.
Okay. Thank you, Gabriela. I was explaining about these show them the path and so on. And when it comes down to content creation, we are slowly but certainly approaching to the core essence of what we are talking today. Content creation and the target audience. When it comes down to the content creation, we will see how through simple steps and simple equipment we could possibly create content together with our students, exactly by the means of movie education. But here it is important that our target audience are our students at the end of the day. Of course, we can start and create some kind of clip, and we will see how it's done later on during this session. But there are some problems here when it comes down to problems with the ideas. Maybe if you are in the best case scenario, if you are dealing imagine that you are dealing with very active class. Let's say you have 20 students or 24 or 30, and many of them have a lot of ideas about creating a digital product, let's say. You have the task to create. You have the task to you have given them the task to create a video, which we'll see in a while how it's done. You should know that this and your students should be aware of the intangibility, let's say, and the variability, the intangibility and the variability of those videos. Let's say we have produced 10 different videos with 10 different groups from those 24 students, but you have 50 ideas. Here it is what I call the content as a product. This is the final outcome of your class, actually. And it is the role of the teacher to be moderator and to monitor the process and to, in the what I say, to keep the peace, to keep the peace in the classroom. From the idea, you can leave your students to generate all kinds of ideas. You can divide them into several groups. You can lead them argue, but in a peaceful way. And after this, it is the role of the moderator to screen, to weed out the unnecessary idea, the poor or unnecessary ideas, without offending, of course, and to test the concept, whether this will work or it will not work, whether this is relevant or it is not so relevant to the idea that was initially placed as a task. And the final outcome, we'll go back here a bit in a while, but the final outcome is how our work should be focused on the question, how could we possibly convert the idea into a real outcome or into a movie clip? So what I'm showing you here right now is the content creation and the movie education when it comes down to teaching in an interactive way. So content creation and movie education are they are not new to the world, but they are not widely accepted among the teachers, and they are not widely accepted, I dare say, even among academic lecturers. And according to an international project, where I should not say the name of the project because I don't want to sound like an advertisement, but either way, according to an international project executed among many countries, the content creation and the movie education, actually raises the awareness of the student concerning the certain phenomena that or the certain problem that is taught, and also improves the final results, the outcome of the teaching process. Later on, I'm going to show you some movie that we created with my students, and based exactly on this movie education. Because what is movie education at the end of the day is a collaboration, a conjunction between entertainment and education. And that's why we coined the term here, edutainment, movie education. There are several things that could be said concerning this education or edutainment, but I want you to be advised that actually the easiest things that could be implemented in a classroom, in digital environment, it's easy. In the real environment, it's even easier, is to familiarize your student with the basics of how we could create movies. Sadly, we won't have enough time today to show you, but anyone can contact me anytime concerning the 3 acts, the 3 stages of creating this movie. I have put a YouTube video here, and the so-called hero's journey when it comes down to movie education. You will be surprised to see that based on those 3 acts or based on hero's journey models, most of the world famous, how should I put it, most of the famous movies are created exactly, the plots and the stories are created exactly based on these phenomena. And how could the students create content and get engaged in the process? What I have noticed from my students, and you will see in the video, is that Those groups of students who participated in the movie creation, in the movie education experiment, they showed far better results. When I say far better results, they were 20% above average, 20% above the average achievement. They were at the top, and they were actively engaged through the entire educational process till the end of the year, because we started doing this project at the beginning of the semester, at the beginning of the term. It took us, the movie that I'm going to show you, it's a 3-minute clip, it's not a movie actually, but it took them, because I was just monitoring, from the idea generation, if you remember here the stages, from the idea generation to the conversion of the idea into a real outcome, it took them no more than 2 hours, including the software solutions and the software, including the use of software to pile up together all the parts that they have shot. What they need for this, they need a simple thing, a camera. Most of our students, I'm absolutely sure that most of our your students are equipped with a phone camera, let's say. They have their phones. They don't need anything beside their phone. What is more important, you know that the basic problem of many teachers is that the students are constantly like this on their phones, tapping and dealing with something. What I do when I see a student chatting, let's say, normally I say, what am I talking about? He says nothing. And I repeat, I'm talking about this thing. Let's say I'm talking about present and continuous. Can you now Google what is present continuous? And I will continue teaching present continuous on the board, on the interactive board, wherever. And I want you to be my judge, whether I'm teaching you in a correct way or I'm telling you a lie. And I encourage my students to actively to search and check what I'm speaking and what I'm talking about. Is it fact or is it sometimes fiction? Because sometimes I do the following thing. I start talking about something and I say, be careful here. The chatters, be careful here. I might be telling you a lie now. Please check. And I absolutely on purpose, I make some kind of tiny mistake, and the chatters, exactly as I call them, are able to find them. And this is the interaction I'm talking about. So they get engaged in the digital classroom, in the classroom. And since we're talking about this movie education, I want to show you a very paragon of an example. Exactly in one of the books, I really love teaching, and my dear friends know that I really love teaching exactly this book. This is the Cambridge thing, because according to me, and as the author says, it's a vibrant course. So there are movies here. Exactly created, let's say, and I'm gonna just for a second play this video to see what I'm talking about. So according to in this book we have video access. Okay, after the videos, normally the students, you know, those who teach English through the Think series, they know that after the video, there is so-called video worksheet. In this video worksheet, often in the think through section, there is a different ending. Working groups imagine an alternative ending. A perfect background, a perfect foundation, a perfect backbone for exactly video creating. We can say, okay, we saw our heroes in the first part. Let's now role play, or even give them more freedom. Imagine a different ending. Don't be, let's say, in this case, don't be Olivia, Luke, Megan, and so on, but be yourself. And if you were on their places, try to create a video, extend this role play in the student's book and say, don't just write and role play, also shoot it, videotape it. And we can organize a contest. We can organize a contest. The best video, here is the engagement. If you don't have sufficient time, if you don't have enough classes, let's say, set this for homework. At least in this way, you'll be sure that they are engaged with some extra English, because they should present it in English at the end of the day. And another thing here that I want also to share about the video worksheets and the different endings. You can also, I have made the following thing. When I prepare students for the let's say for the B2, for the advanced certificate in advanced English, when the group is bigger, I divide them, because normally, you know, two people are talking, the other are looking at the other are looking at the ceiling. Or in this case, what I do, if the group agrees, of course, I make some of the students videotape the speakers, and after this we analyze the mistakes, learning by participating, analyzing this mistake or analyzing that mistake. Of course, those videos are strictly confidential, and then, you know, let's say they will video phone them with my phone or with their own phone, and they will be deleted after this. So that the students do not worry that they will spread and go viral somewhere. This content creation is, it is again content creation. You create content. You are active part of this entire process. Those things are important when it comes down to the contemporary teacher and to the contemporary teaching approaches. So I think I've been talking far too long, and it's time for Q&A session. And thank you for listening and standing me. So the floor is yours.
There are no questions at the moment.
Okay.
Maybe something in the chat, perhaps. I don't know what's happened to my camera, apologies. Do we have any feedback from delegates? Some very positive feedback already.
Okay.
Specific.
Anyone? I would be happy to answer, of course.
I don't think we're able to allow people to speak, are we, in this webinar environment, Gabriella?
Yeah. Someone raised a hand.
Your hand.
Yeah, hand raise might mean someone wants to speak.
If someone would like to, yes, definitely. There is someone with a raised hand. Viara Kazanaklieva. I'm sorry if I am not pronouncing okay.
What does the hand up mean? It says ask to unmute. Can we allow people to speak if they want to?
Yes, yes.
Well, that's what you've done, perhaps.
So yes, if you would like to say something instead of writing in the chat box, then raise your hand and we can unmute you.
Yeah, of course.
Or it would be just nice to see you. Just if you would like to say hello.
Christian, I think there's no questions now, so...
I hope I haven't bored the audience.
I'm sure you haven't.
Or I didn't talk too much. I tried to keep to the minimum, but I don't know whether. Yeah.
Well, you haven't lost any of the audience. That's always the. If you're on Zoom, it's never happened, but I can imagine you could be looking at the numbers of participants disappearing from your webinar as you speak. Wouldn't be very nice, but that hasn't happened, and people are saying it's very useful and very helpful.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian.
Yeah. So finally, I would like to show you, if we have time, of course. I would like to show you, I'd like to show you the movie that we created with our students, so that the colleagues here see what is the real outcome of what I was talking about. Is it okay?
Yes, we really like.
Sure, Christian.
I was absolutely on purpose delaying it for the final part, but since there are no questions, that would be great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to optimize for video clip. Yeah, this is the video.
John has been the top salesman in his company. He sold assets, cryptocurrency, blue stocks via the phone. During the past 6 months, all of the Employee of the Month award stars have been won by him. Steve followed the script, used his charisma, and maybe had a little bit of a luck. Everybody was delightful with their work until a new employee came.
Are you excited about the new position?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm fresh out of college, so it will be my first job and I will give it my all.
Okay, perfect.
I've heard all that you have said, but I don't think money is the main point of my career. I have a lifetime ahead of me and I don't think it's ethical to do so with humans and humans' money and people's money.
But if you don't do it, someone else will do it. I mean, money is the thing that's driving the world. Like, I have a bachelor's degrees in marketing. We studied at university that consumer satisfaction is the most important thing, but do you think that if I satisfy the customer, I'll get this much amount of money? I mean, do you see these figures? You won't get this this amount of money in any kind of job. And this is always like I come here for 8 hours and I make 10,000 a month.
Well, you have a point, but I don't think money is a priority for me. At this point, I should focus on my career first, and I don't think this job is suitable for me and my needs, so maybe I'll quit.
This opportunity is once in a lifetime.
I don't think it will fit me. I'm sorry. Have a good day.
I wish you the best.
At first, John really didn't think about Christine's words. As the time passed by, all the things she said were occupying his mind. Maybe innocent people were suffering because of him.
Maybe she was just right. What's up, my man?
So, just broken your new record.
Oh, really?
Yep, it's a million in a day. So, what about we go out for a drink first 10 rounds or me? Like, whatever you want.
I don't really know, man.
Come on.
I don't feel like it.
Something wrong?
No, I just want to be alone this night.
Cool. If you change your mind, just like hit me up.
Bye, have a nice day. And drink a beer for me.
Of course.
On the following day, in Christine's office.
Hello.
Hi.
Why didn't you come to the party?
Well, I was last night I was at home. I really think about something. And I think I thought about with this.
Is this a letter of resignation?
Yes, this letter of resignation.
Why?
Well, as I told you earlier, I really thought about it last night and I came to the conclusion that we were just basically stealing people's money. This is bad. I don't want to be a bad person. I want to be a human.
So this was the video. This was the video, and the basic task here was to create some kind of content concerning the business environment, and you can see that they were actively engaged. Those are students, my ex-students of mine, of course, and I'm glad that they achieved this, and by doing so, they improved their overall results.
Thank you, Christian.
That was really nice. And it's much,
Right.
much more fun as well, I guess, to write and act out those things.
Thank you, Christian. Please stay healthy. I wish you good luck and good summer. It's coming summer, so enjoy the summer days, and I hope to see you soon, not only online, of course. Thank you to Duncan and Gabriela about this event. And yes, you are welcome on the next Cambridge Day, maybe next year.
Yes, definitely. We'll be sharing with you information if there are any events. So yes, so take care. And yes, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All the speakers, all the attendees, to Maggie and all your colleagues. Thank you so much for making it such a successful event. And as we all say, good luck. See you next time. Hopefully it won't be too long.